God, we know that we all fall down. And that some of us, even in our lives, have been brought to our knees. And if we have not been brought to our knees by the circumstances of life, then maybe it's time for us to take the opportunity and go voluntarily. Yes. To give ourselves over to something that is larger than us, to give ourselves over to God. And that does not mean giving up our power, oh God. That means empowering us to do more than we ever thought we could do. Yes. By being present, by being awake to the choices in our life, by giving ourselves over to you. We do not give up the oar to row the boat. Yes. We will do the work that is asked of us. And so, Lord, may the words of my mouth be a blessing unto this congregation. Yes. May all who have come here this day find peace in their hearts, be blessed in a way that they came to be blessed. Amen. May they be inspired, O God, yes, to drop to their knees when it is time. Yes. To pray when they need to pray. To be present to all that is around them when they need to be present. Yes. To choose life and to not be afraid. Yes. Lord, heal all the bruises known and unknown among us. Yes. Give mercy and grace and love to my words this morning. Yes. Amen. We all fall down, don't we now? We've all been brought to our knees. You know, if you haven't been on your knees lately, it's a good place to start. Not resigning yourself, not giving up your power, but humbling yourself to that which is larger than you. I'm going to talk this morning about gravity, about this force, this phenomenon in the world, this energy that all physical bodies in the world attract each other. And so since all the things on the earth have a smaller mass than the earth itself, gravity pulls everyone and everything toward the ground. We are all pulled toward the earth. And so in essence, it is gravity that connects us. We are connected to one another by this pull to the ground. And it is because of gravity, not only that we do not float off into space, but that same gravity is the reason, in fact, why we fall. So gravity is kind of a great equalizer. Yes. Now, I have always been a little bit of a physics junkie. Physics has carried a sense of awe for me, similar to when I feel awed by art or music or a good book or filmmaking. But the beauty of physics is not just the natural phenomenon that we can explain, it is also what we can create with that understanding. When you add humanity's ability to work with and in spite of this energy that pulls us down, there is even more to be astounded by in God's creation. See, we may have figured out how to launch a rocket into space, and we can build bridges that can bear the weight of miles of traffic, and we've built buildings as high as 163 floors. All that's true. It's pretty amazing. And the sheer fact that 76,000 airplanes can take off and land daily in the United States alone with little incident, that's nearly a miracle. Not only because we managed to figure out how to do so, but because everything we do in physics, we do in approximations. There's guesswork. There's a leap of faith. And yet the science still works. So this morning, I just wanted to start us off by celebrating humanity with a big wow. So wow. Wow. Now, I'm going to digress for a minute and talk about a movie, but I promise you I will get back to religion in just 1 second. How many of you had a chance to see the film Gravity? Oh, good, lots of folks. Well, if you haven't seen it, this is your spoiler alert chance. I actually had someone in the 8:30 service at this point get up and leave. It's okay. But the film deserves its own wow. It's visually something to behold, a marvel of a 3D film production with special effects. And I don't know if you were lucky enough to experience another one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, the theater recliner seat. So the effects were great, but the story struck me in a way that I hadn't expected. And it took several days for it to really sit on my heart and speak to me in its full impact. You see, in the film, Sandra Bullock plays Dr. Ryan Stone, a medical engineer on her first space shuttle mission aboard the Explorer. She's accompanied by a veteran astronaut, Matt Kowalski, who's played by George Clooney, who is on his very final expedition, his last trip to space. The scale in the film showing two tiny astronauts floating around in the vastness of space next to an enormous green and blue spinning Earth creates an experience of proportion that manifests a sense of awe and the holy. It's as if the filmmakers are mirroring the attempts of those builders of cathedrals of our history who tried to create a sense of awe in the church by the structure, by the building itself, drawing our eye to the sky and making the churchgoer feel small in comparison. The director of Gravity creates an experience of the paradox of our significance and our insignificance. You can feel it in the movie. Now, as we're introduced to Dr. Stone, she is obviously very focused on her work, on the task. So focused, in fact, that she has to be reminded by Kowalski to take in the view which he is relishing for his very last time. It's as though Clooney's character is begging us to pay attention to every single moment as if it were never going to happen again. Because it's not. Not in the same way. Sandra Bullock's character's name, Dr. Stone, was not chosen by accident. And if you had come to the 10 o'clock service, you would have heard all about existentialism and the metaphors that it connects to in there. But Dr. Stone, in this service, I want to lift up. Her name is reminding us not only of her numbness to her own emotion at the beginning of the film, being stone-faced, but her name also focuses on the weight of what she carries with her, her story, the burden that she must bear of having put her young daughter in the grave. Stone's daughter, we learn later, fell playing tag and hit her head on a stone, a freak accident of falling, of gravity. But Stone's name has biblical implications as well. Our ancestors in the Jewish scriptures piled stones to mark the spot where a human life was influenced by the holy. Our ancestors in the Jewish scriptures also piled stones to mark a burial. And so when our ancestors crossed the desert, even when they felt alone in their crossing, they would pass these piles of stones along the way, reminding them of all those who had come before, reminding them that they are not the first to have crossed this path. Dr. Stone's name also brings to mind two very key stories in the life of Jesus. The first being the story of the adulteress, brought to Jesus by the Pharisees in John chapter 8 when he asked that he who is without sin cast the first stone, lest we not judge how another handles the trials and tribulations and difficulties of journeying through this life, being hurled at times through space, ungrounded. And that second stone in the story of Jesus being at the tomb, the stone that must be rolled away in order for us to experience the resurrection. You see, we have to do the work. We have to roll away the stone to make way for God to do God's work. We have choices in our lives, the power to make decisions and to make meaning, and what we do with our lives matters. Now, this film actually can easily be interpreted as a religious parable. The film asks really primary questions about our existence, religious questions of how human beings come to terms with their own existence, why we are here, what is our calling and our purpose, and how do we make decisions when the path is not clear. We will all be forced to make a choice from a place of confusion in our lives when reason is not enough. We will all have to make decisions in difficult circumstances without having all the information or with no clear path to a right decision. And we will have to choose anyway. What story and what people we attach our individual lives to matters. So let us choose a story big enough to hold all of us. And let us choose a people to influence us who encourage us to bring our whole selves to the conversation. You see, these kind of untethered decisions happen regularly in our lives if we're not living a life scripted by someone else. Take that in. If we're not living a life scripted by someone else, we will continue to feel like we are making untethered decisions. Decisions without a clear path. If we are truly awake and understand our God-given power to choose, these decisions will happen all the time. The decision, for example, to marry or to not. In my own life, I married at 23, just after graduating college, because that was the script that was written for me. It was so scripted that I didn't even think to question it, even though I knew in my heart it was not the right thing for me at the time. There are so many scripts like these in our culture about what it means to be a woman or a man, about what it means to be good, about what it means to be religious or spiritual. We have to co-create our own script, working with the facts of our lives in a way that includes our gifts as well as our dreams and our desires. But there are some scripts that we can resign ourselves to follow if we're unsure. My suggestion is that we choose a script that we can influence and help write, a script that is bound in covenant and not creed. Because there are lots of scripts out there about whether to divorce or not and what that means, to have a child or not, to take a job or not, or to leave one, to buy food or medicine, to bond out of jail or to pay a lawyer, to take the deal or to go to trial, to help your neighbor or not. In Gravity, Dr. Stone is our allegorical human being, facing life and the difficulty of existence. And her question is, will she participate in her life fully to its end despite its complications, or will she give up? It tells the tale of her struggle to make sense of it all and to find hope. The other astronaut, Matt Kowalski, is a live-in-the-moment kind of guy. George Clooney playing George Clooney, it seems. Through Through his interactions with Dr. Stone, his curiosity, his expression of gratitude and awe, and his stories, Kowalski appears to be present and grateful and full of life and love. And as you've probably seen from the trailer, Stone detaches from the space station while spacewalking, leaving her tumbling through space. Spinning out of control, she has to find her bearings. And we tumble with her in the theater in a scene in 3D, which creates real nausea for those who are sensitive to it. Like a ballerina in a pirouette, she has to find her focal point to maintain control. Her GPS is broken. The technology and the safety nets have failed her, and she must make a choice: give up or try to survive. She's spinning out of control in the vastness of space without any bearings. I know what that feels like. Do you know what that feels like? How do you know where you are, who you are, when the answer is always in relationship to something else? When our ground is only found in relationship, the question is, what do you place at your focal point? Which relationship? See, we can surrender to something larger than ourselves, but we still have to do the work. And sometimes we can find a golden calf or an idol to focus on instead of that something larger that would actually give us a bigger and bigger container for our lives. You see, our focal point, the ways in which we locate ourselves, depends completely on our individual set of values and priorities, and we get to choose what they are. We're given a script of culture and probably the religion of our family and our family's own values, but we get to choose what order we put our priorities in. So what will be your North Star? The focal point when you find yourself spinning out of control. For Stone, she had to search for the largest object in her midst before she could even make sense of anything else. Where was the sun? Where was the light? And she was running out of air. If you've ever been thrown adrift by unforeseen circumstances, this feeling will be familiar to you. A feeling of being so overwhelmed that all we can do is the very next most important thing, if we're lucky. Open your eyes. Breathe. Sometimes simply showing up with your clothes on is a miracle. But Stone manages to find her focal point, and Kowalski eventually retrieves Stone, one lone, untethered astronaut tethered to another, and they make their way towards the station. Now there's this feeling, though, of the blind leading the blind. Communications with mission control are lost, but Stone and Kowalski keep jabbering on to each other and to themselves, just in case someone can hear them. It is their prayer, in essence, an attempt to be seen and heard, to make their wishes known despite whether anyone else is listening or not. Because sometimes some prayer is better than no prayer. Arriving at the space station, Stone's leg gets tangled in parachute cords, and she's able to grab a strap on Kowalski's suit, but they push and pull each other, throwing each other against the space station and then pulling themselves away from where they want to go, with no gravity to hold them down. And after a long struggle and being smashed into one another in their environment, despite Stone's protests, Kowalski detaches himself from the tether in order to save her from drifting away with him. And she is pulled back towards the station in this act of love. As Kowalski floats away to his likely death, He radios to her additional instructions and encouragement and tells her that she is going to have to learn to let go. And then even in his last moments, we hear him in awe of the beauty of the Ganges River in the sun below. All things have a beginning and an ending. And in that beginning and that ending, there is something holy. It's the nature of life. Stone crawls into the space station and takes off her suit, floating in a fetal position for an extended shot, just to make sure that we don't miss the point. But the bigger question is, why do we cling to things that harm us? What is the force that pulls us towards objects that we're trying to let go of? Gravity has no morality. Gravity just does what gravity does. And so it's up to us to distance ourselves far enough that the pull reduces until we are safe. To unhook ourselves from that which is pulling us away from our chosen path or from our values. Not running away, but making a choice to pull away from those things that are hindering us. Even when it's someone or something we have come to love. And even when it hurts. Now, Stone manages to make it to a capsule, and she aligns it with a Chinese space station, but discovers that the craft's thrusters actually have no fuel. So after a brief communication via radio with some Inuit fisherman on Earth who does not understand her distress, there's this moment of the Tower of Babel overlaid. All of this technology created, all of this launching into space and the radio, and yet in real distress, these two human beings could not understand each other, could not help one another. Stone listens to the Inuit fisherman cooing a baby and singing a lullaby, and she too is lulled and resigns herself to being stranded. Up above on the dash in the capsule that she's in is a holy card depicting the patron saint of travelers, St. Christopher, placed there by an astronaut before her who had abandoned the capsule. When she notices it, she says that if she dies, no one would pray for her soul. She says, I'd say a prayer for myself, but no one ever taught me how. She begins to pray anyway, asking for help. Her prayer seemingly unanswered, she is resigned to her own demise. Have you been there, church? Praying for a specific outcome and disappointed when it does not come, as though we expect God to respond to our demands in a way which we expect and on our own time frame. Dr. Stone considers her unanswered prayers as her last effort to hope. And so she gives up. She shuts down the oxygen supply of the cabin in order to commit a painless suicide. As Stone begins to lose consciousness, Kowalski appears outside the window. With the sun lighting him from behind, he looks like an angel. Now, no doubt, his first name was chosen on purpose, for in Matthew, it is an angel that appears at the tomb of Jesus. And then there's Kowalski, who's getting ready to enter the capsule as I, in the theater, am about to have one of those culturally inappropriate moments of screaming at the screen. No! Because I'm waiting for Stone's head to explode. Because if he really was outside the window in some kind of predictable, happy ending Hollywood moment sort of way, Stone had no helmet on in the cabin. And so when he opened the capsule, her head would have been exposed to space and pressure when he opened the airlock. So when she didn't explode, I immediately believed that maybe this was a message for her. Maybe she was hallucinating. Maybe this was an angel from God. But Kowalski, we see in the film, is there in the capsule with her, scolding her for giving up, cheering her on. He's a loving presence who gives her practical advice, which she likely already knew but forgot, telling her to use the capsule's landing rockets to propel it towards the station in a last-ditch effort for survival. Because of Kowalski's visit, Stone is given new strength and the will to live on. She turns up the oxygen in the capsule, she restores it, and uses the landing rockets to navigate towards the Chinese station. See, it was in the image of Kowalski that Stone learns to experience the love of life again. She tells the now absent Kowalski to be a messenger for her, to send her love to her daughter, and to tell her daughter that she will not give up. The amazing things that human beings are capable of when we feel we are held by a loving God. Now, in the Chinese station, she also encounters a smiling statue of the Buddha. It seems that all who voyage into space have messengers to help them along the way. Stories to which they can attach their own story to give them assistance on the journey, to remind them when they are untethered that they are not alone. And evidently, we all need an image of God that we can relate to, whether it looks like Jesus or Buddha or George Clooney. Stone enters the capsule just as it is falling back to Earth and is starting to break up on the upper edge of the atmosphere. And as it enters the Earth's atmosphere, Stone hears mission control over the radio tracking the capsule. And in her final leap of faith, Dr. Stone says, "The way I see it, there are only two possible outcomes. Either I make it down there in one piece and I have a hell of a story to tell, or I burn up in the next 10 minutes. Either way, whichever way, no harm, no foul. Because no matter what, it's going to be one hell of a ride, and I'm ready." Now, fully awake to her circumstances, she plummets to Earth, landing in a lake. Stone seems to be birthed again, baptized into her new life back on Earth, weighed down by her spacesuit that is actually trying to drown her. She must wrench herself free from her spacesuit and swim to the top of the water to breathe. She crawls to the shore and grasps a handful of wet sand, the humus from which we have all been made. And she mutters the final word of the movie, the final prayer: "Thanks." Then we see her take her first shaky steps on land, on the full gravity of Earth. Dr. Stone risked big, and the payoff was big. The payoff was rebirth to a new and awakened life. And yet the film asks us, what would we do if we were faced with complication after complication, disaster after disaster? What have you done? Have you resigned yourself or given up? Maybe you felt that way and made it to the other side, but the question the movie asks is, are we that resilient? Would we fight? Would we take the biggest risks possible all the way to the end, using all the power we have to stay on course? The film pushes us to look deeply at what it means to be a human being. At the same time, so powerful, but so fragile. Can we trade in that image of God that divides us? That image of God with his finger on the smite button, and embrace a God that loves us in spite of it all? Film asks, what grounds us? What tethers us? And what will ground you in the face of a difficulty so great that you cannot even conceive of its possibility in this very moment? You know, I've been privileged to walk with many in this church, atheist, humanist, theist, Christian, all sorts of theologies, in the face of the unthinkable. The death of a child, the unanticipated diagnosis, the bottom of an addiction, freak accidents, mental breakdowns, floods, tornadoes, fires, and felonies. What will ground you in the face of the unimaginable? Will you be willing to fall on your knees and do what it takes to stay participating in life? And one of the reasons why I love this film so much is that no matter your theological persuasion, the answer to the underlying question, the film's response to what grounds us in these kinds of moments, is love. Our love for ourselves, our love for others, and a feeling that someone, that maybe a God, loves us more than we could possibly imagine. The film points to our connectedness to other human beings. Stone wants her story to be one of doing everything she can to thrive in the face of disaster for herself and for her daughter, and for those who didn't make it home. She connects her story to one who would not be beaten down, someone who chose to live awake into her last moments. She's grounded by her interaction with an angel who is full of gratitude even in death. She is grounded by being vulnerable with him and telling her story to him. And she is grounded in his challenge when he asks her to let go of that which is not serving her. When we are untethered, we have a choice to stay isolated or to connect. We can open our hearts and be vulnerable to one another, give of ourselves, and discover the very thing that will sustain us. And this church offers an opportunity, regardless of your theology, to do just that. To bind yourself in a community to a diverse group of people bound together by their agreement to explore this very freedom and the responsibility of choice in our search for truth. A community who challenges us to stay in relationship, to care for more than just ourselves. One more thought about gravity. From a cosmological perspective, gravity is the energy that causes dispersed matter to come together and coalesce. It causes the separate to be bound. And gravity is also a force which causes the things that are already bound together to remain intact. The gravity of our situation here on earth, our struggle to live and to make meaning, calls us to coalesce with other beings during our tumbling through this life. To tether ourselves to a living, breathing, changing, vibrant, diverse community who, when necessary, can hold us accountable, and who, when necessary, can also hold us together. It's one hell of a ride. Are you ready?